to go open up the dollar index right here. And this is really interesting because as you can see right here, from a long-term perspective, we have been seeing dollar moving south. But there is this upside target here still at 12,158. That's still a target that we're anticipating price to move to. The thing here is, though, in the short term, it looks a little choppy. Because if you look at the short term, we've seen it have a nice little bullish pattern right here. And then price moved to the 1.27, but didn't hold there and rallied all the way to the 1.68. So when that happens, we're now actually expecting price to continue to rally. And so what we're looking for here is we're looking for price to stay above this level. If we stay above that level, and that is at 11,897, then we're expecting price to go up a little higher. And so what we have to do here is we have to go ahead and put in some new swings from the low down here, going all the way up here to the high. And now we're looking at a 618 pullback, looking for price to go back up now to this 1.27. So 12,000 is the upside target for dollar. So there is this potential upside move to around about 12,000 on the dollar index. Now, granted, we've got to go ahead and start seeing price go back into this channel line right here. And if I do a little bit of an adjustment here, and actually sinks in, look at this. When I did that adjustment, you actually see that price has tested that low, and now we've gone ahead, and we've tested this low right here. So there is now, we are starting to see a little bit of support coming off that, because previously it didn't look like it, but now we've made the adjustments to our trend lines, and we're like, oh crap, there is a bit of support there. This is the reason why we're holding there, and it's holding above this wave 1 high right here. So there's a lot of, in fact, take a look over here. If I zoom in a little bit closer, this is what makes it so interesting. When we noticed that the market pulled back, it pulled back to test this level, but went slightly below that just to get to this trend line test right here. Then when it broke back above, it comes back and retests it. So this level right here is absolutely significant. And so the next move is going to be anticipated to be bullish. So we are expecting. Now that doesn't mean, that doesn't rule out any sort of short-term correction move, right? We could get some short-term correction moves that the market could go ahead and pull back a little bit and then rally. So in the short term, we could see some strength in the dollar, but it's just to position itself, weakness in the dollar, but it's just to position itself again to get stronger as it starts taking off into this rally. And so if I go back to the chart right here and I dig down to the lower time frame, here's the 15. Let's go ahead and pull up a 1 hour. And take a look at the 1 hour. I'm going to just kill this. Yeah, we can kill this. I always like to clean up my charts. And so if I look at the 1 hour right here, then you can see, yeah, this is the swing that I saw on that daily time frame. So it went ahead and rallied here. Then it dropped back down, went back up again, rallied up here. And so now this is the test. This is where the market came back and tested this level right here, right there, which is perfect in line with the technical analysis. And so we've seen it come back to retest. So we're expecting price to go at least up to this level right here to retest it in the short term. And so we might have some intraday bearish moves on the dollar, just like we've had over the last 24 hours. But that's only to be able to reposition itself to go back bullish again. And so if it goes strong again, we're actually going to look then for the US crosses to be traded against the dollar, but looking for stronger dollar moves, and that's something that's actually something we're going to go ahead and chat about today. So I think that dollar right now is very similar to how the how Bitcoin, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin too, how Bitcoin's set up right now, where it's creating now opportunity for stronger dollar, at least in the midterm, for stronger dollar to take place.
I was going to ask you, Gary, sorry, I want to ask you, what has been your take on recent sell-offs in cryptos? I have a lot of chart alarms set at highs and lows. I didn't really have, dips and pullbacks to add more to on the cryptos, but we're about 18.5% off the high recently in Bitcoin. I've got chart alarms at the recent high, the recent low. We're kind of stuck right in the middle of that recent sell-off. So, what have you been noticing? What have you and Cameron been talking about of, what your plan is moving forward?
It is big right now, and the reason why I think Bitcoin's going to take I think this week's going to be a strong move, a bullish move on Bitcoin, and altcoins are going to follow suit because everything's lined up on the technicals. So before we move to Bitcoin, let's just finish off a little bit on currencies right now.
Sure.
Chris, you know what's really interesting this week? Dollar's interesting, but what's really interesting is if you look at the data coming out this week, we've got CPI numbers coming out for the pound. CPI numbers are showing yearly data, and it's actually showing that we've got a 2.9%. So there's an increase from last year in inflation, and that's a big concern. So which means that there's a possibility of talks of UK rate decision that's going to be a hike in the rates. And if that's going to be the case, we should actually start looking at the pound and addressing where the pound's sitting right now. My focus this week, as I spoke to my live sessions, is let's focus on the pound this week, because the pound, how is it set up technically? And if you actually go to the charts and you break it down, I'm not going to go to all the charts, but I want to give you a couple of hints on what do the charts look like right here. Like for instance, and I want your view on this too, Chris. If you've got any pound pairs that you were looking at, but like if you look at any of the pound crosses, right? Specifically, like here we have a pound New Zealand dollar. I'm looking for a correction, a bullish correction in pound New Zealand dollar. So there's definitely some movement to the upside. Now, could we see a short-term move to the downside first? Absolutely. We're not saying that we're going to see a rally right off the back start of the week. There could be a correction move before the pound takes off. But I'm looking for pound overall to be bullish. Any dips on the pound New Zealand dollar would be a buying opportunity. If I go to let's go pull up another pound pair, pound Canadian, and look at the pound Canadian right here. Same thing right here. Pound Canadian wants to go bullish, but what we may see is a short-term dip first before the rally. So again, short-term dips, then rallies. And a lot of this is going to come back down to what's happening this week. If you look at this week's data, you can see that we have on, this is actually on Wednesday. We have the New Zealand rate, New Zealand GDP coming up. It says that pound, not pound, but GDP quarter data. They're showing here that there's going to be a drop in GDP. So if New Zealand's going to be weakening, and then we're looking at the early part of Wednesday, we're seeing CPI coming up right here that's going to show stronger. I say stronger, but I mean weaker weaker news for the pound, because we're seeing inflation increasing to 2.9%. So we're seeing a possible bullish move on pound, a weaker move on New Zealand dollar. I think the big play this week is going to be pound New Zealand dollar. I think pound New Zealand dollar would definitely be a good play because of what we're anticipating. And that could mean that we could see this rally being a lot higher up into a correction move of about 200 pips. Now I'm talking about the intraday move right here. So we can look at about 200, maybe 180 pip move to this point right here. And if it continues to rally past that level, which is around about 96.86, I think we're going to continue to see upside rallies on the pound New Zealand dollar. Specifically, if they start raising, if there's a lot of chat on the rate hikes.
So when you say upside, are you actually thinking the pound New Zealand starts to make new highs at 2.01, 2.02, or are you talking about this is a bullish direction for you this week to get back to 97, 9800, and then, because truthfully for me, I think the support, this is big picture stuff like daily, weekly charts, 1.83 major support in the pound New Zealand. I saw that kind of double and triple top we had recently from July to August, that big slide we've seen recently. I am actually trying to fade that move. If we come up to 97, 98, 99, I'm more interested in shorting that, Gary, than I am going long. So do you think that the pound New Zealand breaks highs at 2.01 and goes higher?
Yeah. Well, when I say new highs, what I'm referring to is we're going to see price come back to retest 96.57. Now, when we get to that level, then we'll have to take a look and see what the decision is on the rate decision. Now, this is critical right here, because when if price gets to that level and we don't see them raising the rates in the pound, that might be a very sell-off on the pound New Zealand dollar. Right. So I do believe that right now, I think the hype's going to be positively bullish on the pound as we rise up to that 95.65 level. And then at that point, then I think the chat around what's going to go down on the pound, whether they're going to raise rates or not. If they don't raise rates, that's a big bearish move on the pound. Right. So if they're in a predicament where they cannot raise rates because it's just going to hurt the economy, I think in the long term it might be even worse. But they may not raise rates, and if they don't raise rates, that might start moving the pound bearish, and that will be a big sell-off to the downside. And we've got targets to the downside we're going to look for as well.
Yeah,
so
well,
yes,
it's interesting to keep watching the pound, because the CPI data comes out this week. We have actually the Super Thursday Monetary Policy Committee rate decision next week. That's on Thursday. I'm looking at the calendar now, Gary. It is forecasted to remain the same at 0.10%, so no change to the official cash rate as far as the forecast. The Monetary Policy Committee asset purchase facility remaining the same. The official bank rate votes remaining the same. So unless that narrative changes this week, we're looking at just another steady, don't do anything, don't rock the boat, keep the rates the same. And again, that's why I'm saying, like, the discussion might change, the narrative might change, the hint might change, but I don't think any central bank right now is actually going to take the rate decision and change it. I think they're going to try to get free mileage out of the narrative. I think they're going to release statements, or maybe drop the media lines of, like, this is what we'd like to do. But by the way, even though we'd like to do it, we've got this, and this that prevent us from actually doing it. So it'll be like a very calculated narrative. We've seen the Fed do it for years. But this is what the markets do, is they get a little bit overexcited, maybe start pricing in things ahead of time. So again, but the good thing is let's watch those pound crosses. I think the pound pair is what I'm actually really happy with, Gary. And I know that we talked about this, behind the scenes, but how nice is it now to have the pound crosses back at normal margin and not have it be 3 times more expensive? How nice is it to trade the pound pair, like the pound US dollar, and trade it for the same margin that you would for the euro dollar? Trade the pound yen, the pound Swiss for the same as you. It's like, oh my gosh, it's only been 6 years post Brexit, but we finally got it. So the pound pairs are now back on my radar as far as I'm trading them more actively, trading lots of pockets, So I'm really happy that brokers finally came to their senses, because essentially it's like, look, man, I don't like trading the yen pairs. Pound pairs are really expensive. I'm trading like 12 to 14 currency pairs. This is crazy. Now I've got the whole gamut I can trade, which is nice.
So, okay, Chris, there's a lot of good opportunities coming out with the pounds because of the range changes. Now, of course, it depends on the type of strategies that you trade. If you trade strategies that are applying a lot of cost averaging, you may need to start widening your entry points because of the ranges been changing.
Correct.
But the great thing about the pound New Zealand dollar right now, we can see about a 200 pip rally to the upside. So which means if we're seeing 200 pips to the upside, that means that you can take some short-term opportunities, short buyers going long. So for instance, the London breakout. Look for buy opportunities on the London breakout for those 20 pip, 30 pip, 40 pip grabs. Get your profit out of that trade, and then wait for it. And as we get to that resistance again coming into next week, and I think that's what it's going to be. I think this week's going to be a correction move. I'm talking about a correction move because we've got a big downswing on the pound New Zealand dollar. So this correction move in the pound New Zealand dollar is going to be 200 pips. It's going to create opportunity this week for traders. But next week, it's going to be decision time. When the rate comes out next week, the market may be expecting a rate hike, but when they go ahead and keep the rates unchanged, there may be disappointment in there, and that's going to drive that pound New Zealand dollar big time bearish to the downside. We may see a bigger, stronger move to the downside as we start heading south on that. So I think that's a good call to watch that over the next week as we go into the. In fact, we'll probably talk about that in next week. Depending on what happens this week, we'll have the conversation on next week and say, hey, well, how's the pound New Zealand dollar set up next week? And we'll look at all the pound crosses as we head into the news based on the rate decision, and we'll see how it's technically set up in order to be able to take an opportunity, or maybe you can even see the market range bound at those levels and looking for breakout as the news comes out on Tuesday.
Yep, I agree. Stuff to watch as always.
Yeah, and so pound New Zealand, like I said, pound and New Zealand, both those currencies are big topics, big discussion this week as we look for opportunity this week on those two pairs. Keep those two currencies. So, for instance, another one would be like New Zealand CAD. It's not trading against the pound, but New Zealand looking for a New Zealand CAD. If you go to the chart right here, you'll see that there is a huge opportunity. I believe there's a huge opportunity on New Zealand CAD for a sell-off, and it's only because we've rallied for so long right now. We're looking for that correction, and there's a lot of room to the downside based on this this pair and its its trading range. We're looking at around about 100 to 160 pips, so 100 to 160. Now this is a pair that doesn't trade wide trading daily trading ranges, which means it is a very nice pair to trade when using cost averaging strategy, because you don't get caught up in so many positions, but you can have very tight cost averaging positions in there and make profit on that very quickly. In fact, the New Zealand CAD is one of the pairs that I scalp a lot on. New Zealand CAD, US dollar CAD, US dollar, Euro US dollar, Canadian Swiss. These are pairs that I like to trade a lot because it doesn't have these big breakouts, and it always does. If it does have a breakout, it always comes back to at least 50 to 60% of the breakout. So it's an opportunity to be able to trade that. So New Zealand CAD would be something I'll be really looking at this week for a sell-off this week. And if you're holding any positions on a short on New Zealand CAD, this one will be a good play to keep on.
I love it because we just took profit last week on New Zealand CAD. We had all those equal lows that, back in June, we had levels at 86.30, 86.50, 8,700. We had a great buy trade on a pocket at 87.25. I closed out those 3 positions for about 850 pips last week on New Zealand CAD. So 9,000 was my price target. I love the fact you're looking short. I think that's a good looking trade for this week.
Take a look over here just on the last couple of weeks of trading on this. Look how many opportunities we've been trading. New Zealand CAD, grabbing our 20, 30 pips out of the market. Yep. Easy money on the New Zealand CAD. Canadian Swiss, taking profit on that. So it's been an easy grab on the Canadian crosses, but also specifically New Zealand CAD, US dollar CAD, Euro US dollar. We threw that in there, but the CAD Swiss as well, Aussie CAD. So making some good ground on those pairs just by watching the ranges and trading those ranges with inside the parameters that we're looking at. So
speaking of trading ranges, I got my Rainstorm. My Rainstorm Pro is doing a pretty good job of that. It was up like 500 pips last week, just trading same thing, just picking up lows, picking up highs, eliminating risk, protecting profit. It's been really steady, man. The month of September, like 1,300 pips for strictly robot trading. Perfect Storm Pro has been, as always, for the last 3 years, it's been the robot that just continues to perform really well and exceed my expectations. And even when I'm not super active in my own manual trades, this robot's always blown me away with how much it can kind of scoop up and protect throughout the week. Well,
there was a student in the trading room today that said, "Hey, big dog, I'm in 4 positions on the Euro US dollar." And I said, "Really?" I said, "That's great." I said, "The reason why is Perfect Storm as well as target trading trade a lot of the counter moves based on the market. Right. And if you actually take a look and see how the market is set up on the Euro US dollar, and I've got a chart open right here, you can see here that we actually had a little bearish move to the downside.
Yep. So
the target trading as well as Perfect Storm, both been buying US dollar, Euro US dollar. And this is perfect. I said, this is great. This creates a great opportunity to get in and trade this, because when you see the market doing this type of things right here, where it's buying on the dips, it's trying to position itself. And I said, you're in a good position, because on the Euro US dollar right here, if we do see a correction, a short-term correction, I know we spoke about bullish on the dollar index, but there could be some bearish correction moves. And if that's going to be the case, then we could see another little short-term rally. And I'm just chasing after some short-term profits on all the US crosses until I get the defined directional bias. But here it is right here. We actually put in a trade on the Euro US dollar, and we bought in on this, and we're chasing after a 20-pip grab. We'll talk about that a little bit later after the Bitcoin session.
Nice.
But yes. So yes, your Perfect Storm guys are in those positions, and they're buying long on the Euro US dollar right now.
Love it.
And so are the target trading. So that's a pretty much a consensus of the same direction.
Yeah.
Chris, I think we need to remind everyone about smashing that like button, because if they've liked the content, they've enjoyed the session, we're going to continue to do these sessions weekly. Yep. Go ahead and support the channel. That's the way you support the channel, by smashing that like button. All right, guys, that's it from us. Have a great week of trading. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. This is the team saying cheerio.